I'm Candace Knackman. I work at the NOAA Fisheries Office of Policy and headquarters in Silver Spring, Maryland, and my apologies to those of you who've heard this presentation already. But back on December 10th and 11th, NOAA and the Arctic Waterway Safety Committee hosted the workshop on strategies and communication protocols to mitigate impacts of research vessels on Alaska Native subsistence hunts in the high Arctic. And today I'm just going to give you a quick overview of why we have the workshop and some of the main points that came out of it. The primary reason that we held this workshop was because of an increased interest in understanding how climate change is affecting the ecosystem up there. And with this increase in interest, it leads to an increase in vessel traffic, including an increase in research vessels. And the Inupiat community has, for a long time held that vessel noise and other forms of disturbance could adversely impact their ability to hunt these marine mammals. And especially in 2015, they felt very overwhelmed with a lot of research vessels conducting activities up in the Bering Strait and Beaufort and Chukchi Seas that they didn't necessarily know who the vessels belonged to, why they were there, and what they were doing. And so for that reason, we held this workshop with 4 primary objectives, and you'll see these 4 points again in a later slide towards the end. But really what we were looking to do was to come up with ways to communicate better, both before the season ever begins, during the season if we need to mitigate impacts, and then to also develop some sort of a structure to communicate after the season is over. We had a great level of participation. Again, it was hosted by both NOAA and the Arctic Waterway Safety Committee. We had several federal agencies in attendance and state representatives. We also had all 5 of the native marine mammal commissions that operate in the Bering Strait, Beaufort, and Chukchi, as well as the local borough governments and a few others in attendance. Just as a really quick overview, and in no way am I an expert on waterway safety committees, but in 2014, after the 5 native marine mammal commissions that manage the subsistence of those species in the region determined that there was likely going to be an increase in shipping that could potentially cause issues for their communities, they formed this committee, and you can see the structure on the bottom right. And the structure involves more than just Native communities and Native representatives, but it also involves members of different industries, including the fishing industry and the oil and gas industry. And a couple of federal members sit on as ex officio observers, including the U.S. Coast Guard District 17. It is a self-governing group, and their mission is to implement lawful best practices to ensure safe, efficient, and predictable operating environment for all waterway users. And the area that's identified in purple and the graphic on the bottom left is the area that they're concerned about. So really from just south of St. Lawrence Island into Norton and Kotzebue Sounds and up through the entire Beaufort and Chukchi Sea region. We had a great 2 days of discussion, and here are some of the key points that were voiced by the subsistence hunters that we heard on multiple times. And so really they want to know what's going on and why up near their communities. And then there was also a lot of talk about what does it mean if the research impacts the availability of their subsistence resources, and their concerns that research would take precedence over subsistence needs. We also heard a lot about the fact that these communities are asked to work with the federal government on a lot of different issues, and the feeling that they are being overwhelmed with these requests. And so maybe we should set up some sort of a structure to create a streamlining of that through templates, through dedicated communicators, and ensuring that the timing of our communication is the right time to be communicating. And then lastly, we heard a lot about, is there a threshold of when there's just too much research going on at once that it really would have a negative impact that we should be thinking about? And what we're trying to get to through these discussions and the workshops is what a document known as a standard of care. Standards of care are appendices to waterway safety plans that the waterway safety committees around the country draft. I believe there's about 24 waterway safety committees in the United States. But the important thing to note here is that it's really just a best practices and a voluntary type of protocol. It does not in any way supersede regulations or statutes that the agencies are required to implement. At the end of our 2 days, the general points where it seems like there really was a lot of agreement was, one, that we need communication early in the planning process. There really should be a no surprises policy. Someone should not go out and see a research vessel out on the horizon and have no idea what it's doing there and why it's coming. We also talked about what would be the appropriate venues to have the early communication, and there seemed to be a lot of agreement that the Arctic Waterways Safety Committee probably was the best place, since you have representation from all 5 of the affected Native Marine Mammal Commissions, as well as representation from the local borough governments. Again, as I mentioned, we talked about streamlining communication and developing templates. And then we also acknowledged that it's likely easier to avoid conflicts with some types of research than others. For example, if you're conducting some sort of a seismic survey to gather geologic information about the ocean bottom, really all you need is an open water environment, but it doesn't matter if it happens at the beginning or the end of the season, versus a study where you're looking at a specific marine mammal species. Obviously, that species is only there at a certain time of year, and you need to research it at the same time that the hunters are trying to collect those animals for their subsistence. So looking at potentially different ways to mitigate different types of research. And that this really is a dialogue and will be an iterative process as we move forward. And so as I showed at the beginning, we basically all came to agreement at the end of the workshop that the 4 reasons that we were there really are the 4 pieces that need to be in this standard of care document. So again, making sure that we communicate early in the process. If there are areas that need to be mitigated, coming up with a way to mitigate that, which also then means you need real-time communication during the season. And then finally, reporting back at the end of the field season, 1, if there were conflicts, how were they handled? But then also, what were the preliminary results of your research? The community really is very interested in knowing what you learned and what happened up there during the season. As some of our next steps, we'll be putting out a meeting summary that anyone can read. We're also redrafting the standard of care, which was shown at the December workshop as a very rough document. That'll be going back out to the participants hopefully next week for review, in preparation for our next workshop, which will be March 2nd and 3rd in Juneau. And then we're hoping to finalize that in time for the 2017 field season, but then realizing that we need some short-term measures for the 2016 season. And so I know that there are several folks from NOAA, from NSF, and other agencies that fund federal research up in Barrow right now talking with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission. And then there's also a discussion going on about funding issues and how to help fund this effort. And that's all I have, and I put in here the Arctic Waterways Safety Committee website for any of you who might be interested, since a lot of us probably don't know a lot about them. And I'm happy to take questions.
Candace, this is Guillermo.
Hi, Guillermo.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, good. You probably are aware of, but if not, BOM in the past funded a study where subsistence activities of, I think it was Cross Island, were monitored with GPS.
Yeah, the Michael Galganitis work.
Yeah, it's like it looks like a spaghetti diagram with all sort of tracks on the Beaufort Sea. If you don't have that one, I can get you a copy.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Do you have it?
I have an electronic copy somewhere, but I don't know if it's gotten lost in my multiple office moves over the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay. I'll send it to you just in case.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, Candace, one of the things we talked about at the meeting was developing a better visualization tool, and so I'm hoping to get all of the groups together who have sort of GIS-based tools that can include information about when and where subsistence hunts happen and start to lay over where and when ships are going to be. Unless, if at any time you don't think that's relevant to the group, let me know, but I do plan to proceed with that and have at least one meeting of that group before the next Waterway Safety Committee meeting.
Yeah, and we're actually trying, I should say our workshop planning counterparts on the native subsistence side are working on putting together at least a static map right now where we could then give you the shape files. That could then go into a system that you're talking about. But I'd be happy to talk with you further to figure out who we need to talk to and what we need to get involved.
Okay. Good. And then, so I also attended this workshop, and it seemed to me that this group, this IARPC working group on Arctic logistics, is a good place to share information about avoiding conflicts with subsistence hunters, about workshops and meetings, places where researchers should go and present prior to their activities in order to vet them and make sure that there isn't any obvious conflict that they're going to create, and also to go back and report to those communities. But so we'll probably be, this will be, I think, a topic that's coming up, and I'll share back, and Candace hopefully will continue to join us, information about the standard of care document that she mentioned. So I hope to attend the next workshop as well. Thank you very much, Candace.
You're welcome.